Hey everyone, welcome to Product Momentum. I'm Sean Murray, Director of Product Management here at ITX.
And I'm Dan Sharp, a Product Manager at ITX. It's our privilege to continue the Product Momentum journey, a platform that celebrates the thinkers and doers who are shaping the future of software development.
That's right, Dan. Our goal is to introduce you to industry leaders, innovators, and practitioners and bring you their insights, advice, and innovations. We talk with experts from product strategy, UX research and design, security, engineering, leadership, and more. We'll discuss how their approaches to problems help empower teams and build trust. And we'll explore trends, tools, and techniques that your team can use to deliver the software solutions your users need today. So tune in, stay curious, and join the conversation.
You can catch us on your favorite listening platform, or if you prefer the video experience, you can find all our latest episodes on the Product Momentum YouTube channel.
And if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share. That way, we can be sure to provide you with the best podcast experience. Dan, we just wrapped with Nesrine Changuel. She is a dynamic thought leader in the space, and she's got a brand new framework called Delight that she's bringing into our space. What do you think about today's conversation?
Well, first off, it was so much fun that I think we probably could have gone 3 times as long as we did. Um, I love it, right? This product delight model that she has in her new book. It's really for me kind of my next professional frontier as a product person, thinking beyond, purely the functional into, what are those things that have those aha moments for users. Really awesome conversation. I'm just really excited for people to listen to it.
Yeah, build for the motivators. That's going to be a big takeaway from today. Let's get to it.
Let's do it.
All right, hey everybody, we have a special episode today. Nesrine Changuel is coming to us straight from London by way of Paris. Nesrine is a product coach, advisor, and speaker with over a decade of senior product experience at Google, Spotify, and Microsoft, where she has participated in building amazing products like Chrome, Meet, Spotify, and Skype. She is currently almost finished with her book, Product Delight: How to Make Your Product Stand Out with Emotional Connection. We've had a quick peek at the book. It looks amazing. Really excited for everybody to get an opportunity to read this. But we are going to talk with Nesrine today, and then we're going to give her an opportunity to plug the book at the end. So I'm not going to say too much more. Nesrine, welcome to Product Momentum.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Happy to have this conversation today.
Yeah. So first, talk to us about Delight. Why is this so important when building products?
Okay, so first of all, what is delight? That's one of the questions I very often get, especially that I'm very vocal about it. And for me, just to simplify it and make it as simple as possible, building delightful product means that we need to build product that solve for both functional need and emotional need. So we are very used to building product to make sure that they are functioning well and they are solving a functional problem, but that's usually not enough. And what I'm really advocating for and promoting these days is make sure that your tech product, or whatever product, by the way, whether it's a hardware, software, is of course functioning well. It is solving the functional needs, but try also to include users' emotional need into your solutions. So the combination makes what we call emotional connection. So what we want to achieve is make sure that there is a connection and an emotional connection between the products and the user. And by the way, emotional connection is not a new concept. Maybe you've heard about it mainly in the design area as well as the marketing area. Like the best marketing campaigns are those who are relying on emotion, like emotional ads are the best. However, what I noticed being like in product for most of my career, that this is not something very much spoken about in business and products. So you have designers talking about emotion, you have marketers talking about emotion. What happens in between is that business and product just doesn't get it, and then you create a gap between the two. So building, as I said, like building for delight is about conceptualizing solutions that try to combine the two. And if I need to give you now very little theoretical definition of delight is an emotion. So by definition, delight is a type of emotion. And do you know that delight is also a combination of 2 emotions? And these are joy and surprise. So just think about yourself. If you are in a moment experiencing joy and surprise at the same time, then you are delighted, right? So that's the definition part. Now, if we get to the practical part, how can I bring delight into my products? It relies on three pillars. So the first pillar, your product has to solve for a pain, an existing user pain. You need to make sure that whatever you're building is solving for something that the user is needing. So that's number one. Number two, it has to come with exceeding expectation. And that's something that is not necessarily very well addressed, meaning that you should not just meet users' expectation. That's not enough anymore as in nowadays. You need to exceed users' expectation. And the third pillar, we can of course get deeper into these pillars with examples, but the third pillar is to anticipate needs. Remember, there is surprise element in delight. And in order to get into that positive surprise, you should not wait for your user to tell you what they need. You need to anticipate these needs for them so that you surprise them in a positive way. So these are the three practical pillars for delight. Is about solving for an existing user's pain or need. Second is to anticipate their needs, and then you have to exceed their expectation. That's more or less what defines delight, and that's what I define in the book as well.
I love that. I love, yeah, that delight is this emotional, like, aha, like, wow, that was cool type reaction to a product. Right. And I think they don't happen as often as you wish they did, right? Like how many times you're using an application, you're just kind of going through a verse, like you really remember those times where it's like, oh man, that was really neat, right? Right. So I'm wondering then, you mentioned you're the three pillars, for the product community out there, right? What are some strategies that product managers can put in place to figure out, hey, like what are the things that are going to go above and beyond just, meeting kind of the functional expectation?
Yes. So for every product or every feature you're building, the very first thing you have to start doing is to identify your users, or what we call them personas. And this is what we usually refer to them. And you need to understand your users and categorize them in order to have a better understanding of what they need or what they value, etc. And today there is this technique called segmentation. You need to segment your users. The problem is there are different types of segmentation, and people and most companies do not use the best way of segmenting users. There is this demographic segmentation, which is usually relying on, like, for example, who are they, their age, their location, their gender. So it's very much related to who are my users. The second type of segmentation is the behavioral segmentation, which means what are they doing? What features are they using? How are they using it? So it's more about their behavior. And these are the two techniques that I've seen most these days, especially while coaching other companies. And there's a third type of segmentation that is not that much used, and that's what will make you win, which is the motivational segmentations. Let me explain. It's about the why. Why certain users are using your products. And surprisingly, if you think about it, users are not using your product for the same reason. Let me explain it. Like, I've been working for Spotify for about 4 years, and I get to this concept of understanding the why working there. And what I learned is that people use Spotify not for the same reason, depending on the moment and depending on the mood and depending on the situation. So you might go to Spotify to listen to a specific song that you have in mind. You might go to Spotify because you want to be inspired. And please inspire me, give me something according to my taste. You might go to Spotify because you want to change your mood. You might go to Spotify because you feel lonely and you want to have some vibe in the room to make you more productive. So you see, it's really important to understand what will motivate your users to use your products and then write them down. This is what we call motivational segmentation. And honestly, for me, that's the strategic start of building for delight, meaning that you have to have a great understanding of what motivates your users and then build for those motivators, not build for who they are. You need to build for why do they need your product.
And I think you mentioned in, yeah, in your book too, like that's getting into like that jobs to be done framework, right? And thinking kind of outside the box of, hey, what are you solving? So I really love that connection and kind of back to some of the other theory there.
Yeah, and by the way, what I love about Job to be done, and again, Delight is very aligned with everything that Delight or Job to be done came with. And what I love about it is that they distinguish between the personal motivators and the social motivators. Let me explain. Like personal emotional motivators is how users want to be or how to feel while using the product. The social part is how they want others to feel about them while using the product. So, for example, some people want to use Spotify because they want to be part of the community. They want to be part of something. And that's why features like collaborative playlist or Spotify Jam exists because people want to share this experience with others. So there is this, of course, the personal emotional motivators, how you want to feel, and there is the social emotional motivators is about, hey, I want to feel cool. Like take Wrapped, for example. It's an amazing example for how it's absolutely not functional, by the way. It's all emotional. And it's all about making you feel how cool you are so that you can share it with your friends and your community, right?
I want
A 6-year-old and a 4-year-old girl, so my Spotify Wrapped has not made me feel cool in 4 years.
Yeah, I think Spotify has been working on this. Like you can remove and add styles of music, which making it hopefully a little bit better. Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that my kids have made the Minecraft soundtrack my important at this point. I want to lock onto something that you said before, this concept of building for the motivators. I just the quote is great, right? All-time product momentum podcast guest quote. So thank you for that. Um, when building for the motivators, do you think that users need to be pushed towards certain motivators? Do they know essentially what's going to delight them? Or do we have to lock on to use cases or understanding these motivators before users really understand what they need?
I know it's going to be rough and maybe a bit strong here. What I'm saying is most users don't know what motivates them, especially on the emotional level. It's unknown, it's somehow hidden. It's there, but it's hidden. I mean, and it means that as a product manager or product leader, you need to do this extra job in order to try to uncover that and identify that. And being hard doesn't necessarily mean that it's impossible. And here's two tools that I can give you that can uncover this. First of all, before getting to the tools, you can uncover that by regular conversation. The more you get to know them, the more you get deeper into conversation with users, the more or the better understanding you get to their values, their desire, and their motivation. And by the way, I'm going to share an example, an unproduct related example. Like when I left my research time, I was a researcher in my very early career. My ex-colleagues wanted to give me a gift, like a goodbye farewell gift. So they actually gave me a macaroon kit box. So it's a box that allows me or to hopefully succeed baking macarons. Now, let me tell you the story why I'm remembering this and why I still have it and why I love this gift. The reason why I love this gift is because a couple of months before I left, I was telling my colleague how I love baking, but also how I failed so many times baking macarons and how hard it is to bake macarons at home. So the fact that they gave me that gift was a proof that I was heard. It was very personal. It was related to me. It was related to my story. Now, what if you treat your users as if you're giving them a gift, like product is a gift? So the more you get to know them, the more you listen to them, the more personal the product get, the more connection or emotional connection you can create. Now, let's go back to how you can uncover this motivator. The first one that I personally applied during my product time is to try to identify demotivators because motivators, emotional motivators are hard. Demotivators, which is the opposite, are much easier to identify. For example, users are much more open to tell you what frustrates them or what makes them angry or what stressed them out. These are easy to identify. So, for example, during my time, I worked as a product lead at Google Meet. And it happens that I work at Google Meet right when pandemic happened, and hit the world, and in Europe we were all locked down, etc. So I had to understand what demotivate users during that time with this type of behavior? What's going on? So I was able to identify things like people are saying, I felt bored. There was this concept of Zoom fatigue where I'm very tired from having back-to-back meetings. There was this concept of, oh, there's a low interaction compared to being in a room. So for me, it was much easier to identify the demotivators and solve for the demotivators than identifying what they really wanted. So that's one tool. The second tool that you can apply to uncover motivators is actually to try to lean forward and try to identify what users really value. I mean, what do they really value so that I can create solution that is 100% aligned with their values. For example, if they value self-esteem, and maybe you can create features that are aligned with their self-esteem. If they value security, then you need to create features that solve for valuing security. So these are things that you can work on in parallel of identifying the motivators so that your solutions are both aligned with what they want, but also with their values. And also, it's a way to avoid falling into the trap of creating addictive features. Because if you create features that are aligned with with your users' value, then there will be a higher level of trust, and you will avoid getting into a word of addiction, etc.
Oh man, love the end of that answer. Like, really, we feel like we really took a right hand turn in like some of the ethics of product management. So really appreciate you bringing that up. Um, yeah, you mentioned earlier, kind of the three pillars of delight. I'm curious to hear, you talk a little bit about that. What is product light not? And also, right, how as product people can we get buy-in from business leaders who maybe they hear, the concept of light and they just hear like, things that are aesthetically pleasing, right?
Actually, I want to highlight here that there are three misconceptions I hear a lot when I talk about delight. And I want to highlight them here so at least we have a clear understanding. The very first one is that delight is not about aesthetic. So I heard you talking about aesthetic. It is a type of delight. And we usually call it like the surface delight. It's when you add this interaction or this little sound these are related to the design and it's called surface delight. So the real delight that I'm here for and I'm writing the entire book for is not for the aesthetic, or it's not something that just to make your product nicer and shiny. So that's the first misunderstanding. The second misunderstanding is that people sometimes perceive delight as a luxury. It's something for the big company. Like people came to me and said, yeah, Nesrine, you're talking about delight because you worked for Spotify, you worked for Skype, you worked for Google, but we are a small company. I mean, we can't necessarily afford working on that. And honestly, I know it's a bit shocking to say that, but they are Spotify and they are Google because they believed in the emotional connection from the start. I mean, see it from the opposite, not because they are rich and they are big that they invest in emotional connection and delight. So that's the second misconception. It's like delight is for luxury, it's for big company. And the third misunderstanding or mistake I hear a lot is like delight is for B2C. We are B2B company, and that's not our priority. We should not care about creating delightful product. And honestly, this is one of the biggest mistake as well, because I see very large company nowadays starting to understand that there is a need for honoring emotions, even in business, because like the competition is very severe and it's becoming like the expectation bar is getting higher. You can't just make your product functioning and that's all. Like company like Atlassian, for example, I've been interviewing while writing the book, and for their product like Jira, etc., they are investing so heavily into making the product manager or whoever using the tool, by the way, feeling good about themselves, feeling relaxed, having these good emotions while using the product. For example, you can customize templates and stuff. So these didn't used to be the case a couple of years ago. So there is a tendency that even in B2B, it's becoming something expected. So these are the three, I think, mistake that I hear a lot, or at least things that get repeated, like delight is nice to have, delight is for luxury, and delight is B2C. Now, if you want to convince your leaders and you want this to be prioritized, usually my advice is to start small. I mean, adopt the mindset. First, get understanding that delight is not just aesthetic, it's not just design, it's a way of working. Like next time you're building a feature, question the following. Ask the following question: is my feature functional only, or am I aligned with my user's emotional motivator so I can create something more attractive and more hopefully emotionally connecting?
Oh man, that's great.
You mentioned starting small. One of the things that we're wondering is how do we practically apply this into like, let's think about like the tactical product level, right? Where I've been tasked with a new project. We've got a charter written, or maybe we're in the charter writing phase. We're in the early part of discovery. How do we bring this new practice of delight into our current way of working?
Uh, First of all, I sometimes, especially like this is a question I receive a lot, especially on stage, where people ask, how can I put in my roadmap like both delightful feature and functional features? Or how can I balance between the two? And my answer is usually try to shift away from saying delight versus functionality, but rather think about delight in functionality. So how can you, of course, bring functionality? And that, don't get me wrong, I'm here to say value is really important. You need to bring functionality into your product, and that's why your product exists. What I'm usually advocating for is how can we turn this functionality from being functional only to functional and emotional at the same time, which I call deep delight in this case. So let me give you a concrete story. Maybe from the story we can get better understanding of how you can get that. So when I worked at Google Chrome, I've been working on one of the biggest challenge, which is tab management, and more particularly tab management on mobile. Like we know that a lot of Chrome users are having so many tabs open. And of course, that's of course a technical issue because it takes memory, it takes space. From a performance, ideally, we want users to have less open tabs. But also, even for the users themselves, it's a problem because it costs them like longer time to navigate through their tab, or if they try to find a tab in their tab grid, it's much more complex. So as a PM at that time, I had to address this problem. So we identified this as an opportunity of improvement. Now, instead of fixing it as or solving for it from a functional perspective, we interviewed users and we tried to understand what they value, what they don't value, what's okay, what's absolutely not okay. And we understood, for example, that users do have a very, very strong relation with their tabs. I mean, I didn't even expect that. But people, for them, it's a no-go that Chrome can touch the order of their tabs or can close tabs on their behalf, even if they haven't been touched for more than 3 months. Don't touch my tab. Like it's a matter of trust. So we knew that we will never ever close tabs on users' behalf because otherwise we would lose users' trust. So what can we do to solve this functional issue? So we interviewed users. We asked them to show us how they navigate their tabs in order to find one tab among others. And I love these moments because these moments show how people interact with your product. And also, I loved listening to what they said because some of them said, "Oh, sorry, I usually don't have so many tabs open." They felt like the need to excuse or like apologize sometimes. So we took all these insights into consideration and we built a solution for it. And the solution that exists today on iOS is called inactive tabs. So inactive tabs is a group of tabs where tabs that has not been touched for more than 20 days are in there. So users can find their tabs. It's not closed on their behalf, but we're cleaning the tab grid for them. We're making the tab grid less stressful, cleaner, and easier to navigate through. So that was one of the solutions that we proposed that is not only functional. As you can see, we could have tried to think about, hey, how can we reduce or compress thumbnails or something like that? But at the same time, try to solve it in a way that complies and works with what users value.
The whole tabs conversation, just the whole concept of like that users were really about do not touch my tabs. I feel like I see that on like a daily basis when somebody shares their screen in a working environment, right? And I've
Gee, Sean,
what tab do I have that's been open for longer than 20 days? And it's probably just Gmail. But it's really, I think like a pretty direct correlation to kind of like what you've been talking about this entire episode. Um, Dan and I are contractually obligated to, in every podcast, to mention AI and to talk about AI. So I do want to ask you a question about is there some world, like how does the concept of AI, or is there a practical application of AI that involves delight? We actually just met and had a really good conversation with Lena Sasardich talking about custom GPTs. So I don't know if there's like a delight GPT in your future, or but just trying to understand how is this growing application of AI in product management, how will that be impacted by Delight, or how can we take advantage of AI to help further the use of Delight in our process?
Thank you for bringing this very useful question, by the way. And I want to say that AI, of course, as any other tool, is a tool that could be used in a good way or could be used in a bad or wrong way. And of course, every product is trying to insert AI, trying to make the best use of AI from the functional perspective. And I cannot agree more than saying, hey, like, if you use AI, you're getting a faster code or less error, or you're getting more effective and efficient products. And that's the functional part. It means that you are improving your product from a functional side. Now, think about how can I use AI so that, of course, uh, functional improvement is happening, but at the same time, I'm trying to align with improving the emotional side. And it's actually very up to date because, for example, I use ChatGPT quite a lot, and sometimes ChatGPT give me crap. I mean, from an answer perspective, it's completely wrong. However, I still like it and I still use it because I like the way ChatGPT is answering me and giving me advices and apologizing when I say it's wrong. And I mean, it feels like I'm less lonely, especially now that I moved into the freelancing area where I feel sometimes lonely, and having ChatGPT next to me give me this feeling that I have an assistant and I'm working not on my own. Even if sometimes I'm not even using the advice or the answers or whatever I'm giving ChatGPT for. So what I want to highlight here is I think we are even in a much more demanding time for delight, especially with AI, because for sure functionality will be improved. For sure, functionality is improving, by the way, thanks to the AI support. However, we should not fall into this robotic world where all products feel like robots. We need to get this human touch, and humanization is extremely important for creating emotional connection. Let me give you, by the way, an AI related example, but I love talking about it. When I worked at Google Meet, I told you it was COVID time. We did not compare Google Meet to Zoom or Teams or whatever other video conferencing tool. What we used to compare Google Meet to at that time is how would it be better if we were all meeting in the same room? Because that raises the bar, that gives you the best expectation. And if you manage to meet that expectation or that bar, you're already like making a huge improvement into your products. So it's about humanizing the product. How would the human case would be better than your product today? And it's funny because when I spoke with the head of product at Dyson, he gave me more or less the same thing. He said that we do not compare our robot to other competitors. We compare to what if you hire a real person to clean your house? And that was interesting because when you hire someone to clean your house, you might give that person recommendation or instruction. And they got inspired by that in order to add recommendation into their robots. So I told you it's not AI related, but it's very important and for me, it's really important to highlight the fact that improving functioning is really, of course, key. But let's not forget about the humanization part for product too. We love interacting with human products at the end of the day.
I love that, you brought that up at the end, right? That I feel like sometimes as product people, it's so easy to fall into like almost a trap of what are my competitors doing. But if you free yourself from that, like there's a whole world of creativity and creative solutions that can be found that will differentiate you just because you're looking at things in a fresh way. Um, so speaking of products, right? You have a personal product that you are launching. Your book, Product Light: How to Make Your Product Stand Out with Emotional Connection, is hitting bookshelves on September 23rd. Um, Super excited to get my hands on it. Thank you for a sneak peek. What would you like to have people know about it?
Yeah. So, first of all, this book is is a catalog of personal product stories. So that's what I want to first highlight. I mean, it's not only like theory or whatever about how to implement delight. Actually, before even having the idea of writing the book, I was talking about delight on stages, on conferences, but I quickly realized that people are super interested in the topic and they wanted to learn more. So I started writing. And when I started writing my personal product stories, how we built Skype from scratch, how we build like video into Spotify. Like when I joined Spotify, it was only audio. And then we started implementing like video podcasts, video clips, how we get to that. And then this COVID time at Google Meet, I started writing about it. And then the Chrome. And from that, I said, hey, this is enough to get something bigger and something like a book. So I started to create product delight out of my product stories. And to complement, I had to interview, of course, other product leaders from super big companies like GitHub, Dropbox, Atlassian, in order to see others' view of emotional connection and delight. So, for those who are interested in the book, I just wanted to highlight that, of course, there are ways of how you can implement delight into your product, but also it's a lot of inspirational stories that make you reflect and think about how can you get into that mindset.
That's awesome. Feels like we really have an area that product people in general kind of really can grow into. So, right, everyone go out there, grab a copy of this book. I know I'm gonna be reading through it. Oh, I'm really pumped for it.
As somebody who teaches a lot of frameworks and runs workshops where we practically use frameworks, I'm a little jealous that you've created your own, and maybe I'll steal it for a workshop in the future. Who knows? Uh, not without consent. Um, some takeaways. Really great conversation today. Thank you so much for being here with us. Um, just something early on that you said was kind of like a focus on exceeding expectations, knowing what users want, and then trying to find some way to go above and beyond. Hitting what they want or what they need is not enough. I think that's just a great mindset shift for any product team, right? Um, I also really liked some of the uses of your Spotify cases, kind of like, why am I using this? Why do I need this? Maybe the users may not know the answers to those questions, right? But you found something that would delight them and that is ultimately going to create a great product. Um, I mentioned this before, but that quote around building for the motivators, and making sure that you are, anytime that you're releasing some sort of new feature, you're thinking about it as giving them a gift. I really like that concept. And the example that you provided about the macaroons made me hungry. Um, and then just delight being a way of working and that it's not a shiny aesthetic. I think that kind of hammers home the framework concept on top of a term that maybe has been used in other contexts within product delivery. But just the fact that we are trying to find something that is going to build a new way that a human is going to actually get value from the product that you're working on, and it may not be something that they totally expect. And then the last thing, always, don't touch my tabs. So whoever is out there working for, if you are out there and you're on the Firefox team, or if you're on the Chrome team, whatever browser, right? Don't touch, don't touch people's tabs, right? So that I'm gonna push for that as the title of the episode. Probably go poorly, like the rest of my title, like the rest of my episode title suggestions. But that was my big final takeaway, right? You can create the lack of delight by removing things that people really use, want, and depend on, right?
I call it anti-delight.
And to delight. All right, we're gonna avoid and awesome. Well, Nazreen, thank you so much for being here today. I hope the rest of your stay in London is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's it for today. In line with our goals of transparency and listening, we really want to hear from you. Sean and I are committed to reading every piece of feedback that we get, so please leave a comment or a rating wherever you're listening to this podcast. Not only does it help us continue to improve, but it also helps the show climb up the rankings so that we can help other listeners move, touch, and inspire the world just like you're doing. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next episode.